fisherman is on the water at dusk with poor visibility. He sees a boat coming right towards him and starts getting frantic and yelling for the fisherman steering the boat to change course. When the other boat rams into his, he unleashes a hysterical invective at the other fisherman's moral and intellectual competence, only to discover the boat is empty and simply adrift. Well, this is a classic, actually Taoist story from Chuang Tzu, but it's one which the Zen tradition in China adopted, and it travelled to Japan, and from Japan to the United States, and from California to here. It's a story of which Joko Beck, my teacher's teacher, was fond, and I wanted to explore this evening the different senses in which we can take this, starting from the story, but also just exploring a little bit further the Dharma talk which she gave around this, which is in her first book, Everyday Zen. It's interesting. There are, 3, maybe 4 senses in which we can take this story. I'm tempted to say levels, and in one sense that's true, but as soon as you say the word level, it's kind of, which is the highest level, which is the deepest level? That's the one I want. They're all relevant, they're all interesting, but let's see. So that's the kind of classic statement of the story. We're out on the lake, we collide with a boat. Pride, shame, anger rise, and we see suddenly the boat is empty. There's nobody there. Who is there to get angry with? And this is the way that the story is generally taken. Well, isn't everything like that? Why do we let other people get to us? Why do we let people push our buttons? Surely, once we realise that in a sense it's all, as Buddhists say, causes and conditions. Whatever they intended, whatever they were thinking about, that's their business, not my business. I'm looking for equanimity. I'm looking for stability. I'm looking for independence. I'm looking for calm. And of course, those are all the qualities that so many of us start Zen practice looking for. Other people are a mess. Sometimes I'm a mess. What can I do about it? I know. I'll establish this independence, this cocoon around myself. I will not be affected by other people. Why should I be? It's all empty rowboats. In another sense, it's all a game. So that's the kind of first sense in which we can take this. But let's go to Joko, see what she's got to say, just to start with. And this is in the context of the talk, do not be angry. Suppose we're out on a lake and it's a bit foggy, not too foggy, but a bit foggy. And we're rowing along in our little boat, having a good time, and then all of a sudden, coming out of the fog, there's this other rowboat and it's heading right at us, and crash! Well, for a second we're really angry. What is that fool doing? I just painted my boat and here he comes, crash, right into it. And then suddenly we notice that the rowboat is empty. What happens to our anger? Well, the anger collapses. I'll just have to paint my boat again, that's all. But if that rowboat that hit ours had had another person in it, how would we react? You know what would happen. Now, our encounters with life, with other people, with events, are like being bumped by an empty rowboat. But we don't experience it that way. We experience it as though there are people in that other rowboat, and we're really getting clobbered by them. What am I talking about when I say that all of life is an encounter? A collision with an empty rowboat? What's that all about? And so that's her initial statement. And that seems pretty much what we've been talking about. It's all empty. Or the other boat is empty. Why am I getting riled? Why is this a problem for me? Surely it's just we'll go back, the ego self rising. And actually, why might we get upset about being hit by a boat that somebody else was supposed to be steering? Well, there's obviously defensiveness there. It's a sense of insult. Maybe a sense of shame that we have actually been hurt by this. Look, my boat's all scraped down the side. Joko says I just painted it. What's that about? It's only natural in that sense to react. But most of all, I think, it's about that sense of lack of recognition in the terms that we've been trying to talk about it, develop the idea of it in the last few weeks. That idea that you literally didn't see me as another human being, as important. And so in that sense, the moral of this story is that doesn't matter. That's only your reactivity, my reactivity. And as I say, in the Buddhist sense, it's all causes and conditions. Do we hold that person responsible? Do we think they had evil, malevolent intent towards us? Do we think they were just careless? What do we think? Does it matter? Well, at this level, no, it doesn't matter at all. What's it to do with me? The damage is exactly the same. The reality of the situation is exactly the same, whether there was somebody in that boat or not. This is a talk in which Joko took students' questions, so maybe I can have a look at a couple of those. Let's see. Oh yeah, this is one of students. I want to extend the rowboat analogy. If we saw that the rowboat was coming towards us and there was somebody in it, we'd probably start screaming and yelling, "Stop that and keep that away." Whereas if it was an empty rowboat, we'd probably just take our oar and push the rowboat aside so it wouldn't crash into us. Joko says, right, we take appropriate action, as in we're not having an emotional response to this, we're just doing what's relevant, doing what's appropriate. Student, oh, I don't know about that, because often you yell anyway, even if it's an empty rowboat, you curse at the universe or whatever. Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? Because, yeah, we kind of do, don't we? There doesn't have to be another. There doesn't actually have to be another person for us to have that kind of immediate ego response. And in fact, when I have that emotional response, I'm reading intention into the other person. I'm judging them. I'm saying what they should have done, what they shouldn't have done, what I think they were thinking, what I think they should have been thinking. But in fact, we're perfectly capable of doing that to the weather, to, well, virtually anything, isn't it? The traffic doesn't matter. It's out to get me. Look at that lorry, or it's out to get me. The rain came now. How could it do that? Doesn't matter. I'm reading in that intention. I'm making up an other to have a response to be separate. And that's, again, the key message at this first level. I'm being separate. I'm separating myself out from either the you I'm imagining there or just the world in general. But I'm over here. I'm separate. Yeah, so the student says, but even though there isn't anybody out there, we manage to think that the universe is doing something to us. Even when it's an empty rowboat, we put a person there. And so Joko replies, yes, right. Well, it's always an empty rowboat. Again, the point is, the longer we practice, the less likely that reaction is to come up. Not because we say, I won't be angry. The reaction just isn't there. We feel differently, and we may not even know why. But again, it's always an empty rowboat. Whether or not there's a person in it or not, it's always an empty rowboat. But there's a potential problem here. It leaves me in my boat intact. I'm not being flustered. There may be an idiot in the other boat. It may be adrift. Either way, I'm not being flustered. I'm not reacting to it. There's still a me here and a boat out there and a separation between the two. So when Joko says, well, it's always an empty rowboat, she's actually talking about both rowboats. There's a nice little, actually, off-the-cuff quote which she gives from writer she's fond of, Anthony de Mello. He says, we must always think of human beings as mean, vicious, manipulative, untrustworthy, and we must always think of them as innocent and blameless. We got those two senses. If there is somebody in the rowboat, they're out to get me. Mean, vicious, untrustworthy, manipulative. But if there isn't anybody in the rowboat, and we're saying there isn't anybody in the rowboat, whether there is or not, then they're innocent and blameless. Whatever they thought they intended, it's causes and conditions, it's the situation, the world as it is, life as it is. Can we hold both of those together? But then Joko really says it. And she says, people, meaning me, I'm mean, vicious, untrustworthy, manipulative, and I'm innocent, and I'm blameless. See, if we go back to that Chuang Tzu story, there's a verse which follows the story. If you can empty your own boat, crossing the river of the world, no one will oppose you, no one will seek to harm you. And that's this mirror relationship which we all have with the world. If other people are blameless because they're merely causes and conditions, they're, as we say in Buddhism, in Zen, empty of a separate self, then I am equally empty of a separate self. I'm empty of blame, untrustworthiness. I'm empty of all of those things. But I'm also empty in the sense that, well, if I'm saying, well, I can't keep saying what I was saying in the first version, because there's me being calm, having equanimity, not being affected by whatever's going on. And now suddenly I find that I'm just like the person that is or isn't in that other rowboat. I'm causes and conditions in exactly the same way. I'm empty. Now, in the Taoist meaning of this is if I act in accordance with the Tao, if I act in accordance with nature, if I merely go with the flow, if I merely follow where life leads me, then I don't encounter resistance. I don't attract harm. I don't attract envy, all of those other emotions, jealousy, because I'm just a part of life, moving with the flow. I'm the water moving down the river, now here, now there. Where I stop and become fixed, then I create resistance, I create turbulence. And that's pretty much the kind of Taoist meaning of that. But we have to understand that, well, another thing that one of Joko's students says in this talk, in fact, the first question, you see, where does this leave us in terms of action, in terms of actual doing? The student says, sometimes when I read about Zen, it seems that you're just a spectator. Yeah, because I'm just watching, I'm not reacting, I'm cool, stable, calm. And Joko says, no, not a spectator at all. Zen is action itself. And actually thinking back, maybe we have a natural, well, the rowboat example is we're being threatened. We feel we're being attacked. The boat is being rocked. Maybe we're going to fall out. We're subject to damage, the big scrape down the side. You know, my fishing trip is wrecked. And in relation to that defensiveness, my self naturally arises in its shielding, defensive form. I feel threatened, have all the responses I've been talking about. But actually, there's a different sense that we can come at it from here. And I want to pick up the actual examples that Joko goes on to talk about in this. He says, well, okay, we talked about the rowboat. I'll put that at one side. Now I want to talk about Elizabeth and the washing up bowl. I want to talk about the dishpan at our house where I live with Elizabeth. Now, since I'm retired from work, I'm home most of the day, and after I rinse the sink, I like to set the dishpan in there, like a dish. So if there's a spare cup during the day, I can conceal it in the dishpan. Since that's the way I want the dishpan, it's obviously the right way. Right? But when Elizabeth comes home, when Elizabeth does the dishes, she rinses the dishpan and turns it over so it can dry. At noon, I have the house to myself, but at 5 o'clock, I know she's coming home. So I think, well, am I a man or a mouse? What am I going to do about the dishpan? Am I going to put it the way Elizabeth wants it? So what do? Well, actually, I usually forget the whole thing and put it any old way. And then there's another thing about Elizabeth. I live with her and she's wonderful, but there couldn't be two people who are more unlike. The joy of my life is to find the one item in the closet that I can throw out. It's great. Elizabeth has 3 of everything and doesn't want to throw anything out. So it means that when I want to find something, I can't find it because I've thrown it out. And when she wants to find something, she can't find it because she's got so much stuff she can't find it. One more example, and then we'll get to the point of all this. I'll tell you what it's like if I go to the movies with my daughter. Mum, you know your taste in movies is just impossible. And I say, well, you're not remembering the one that we went to that you wanted to see. What about that? So squabble, squabble, squabble. And we end up going to a movie which is, well, it may be whatever it is. What's the point of all these stories? Basically, I couldn't care less about the dishpan. But we do not lose all our particular little neurotic quirks from practice. Neither my daughter or I really cares about the movies, but these little squabbling interchanges are what life is all about. That's just the fun of it. Do you understand? We don't have to analyse it, pick it apart, or communicate about it. The wonder of living with anything is what? It's perfect in being just as it is. Now, I think it's interesting that she picks examples which are actually about relationship. It's not like there's a world out here and a threatening person and is that okay or not. These are my intimate people. This is Elizabeth, my student, fellow teacher, who I've been with at the Zen Center and before that at the Los Angeles Zen Center for how many years by this point? And this is my daughter who I raised. These are my people. These are my relationships. These are the people that I recognize. These are the people who recognize me. These are the people who being who I am is based on. Recognition. And they're about the kind of, petty but playful things. They're about the kind of things that can really rile us or not, or be, as Joko says, just part of the fun. As long as it's part of each of us recognizing the other, it's part of the fun. Sure, any of that could degenerate. Somebody could really take offence. It could get part of a power play. We'd have to work out how to re-establish that recognition, how to remake the framework, or hopefully, because it's a real relationship, because there's real recognition of each other going on there, what we've been talking about in terms of Jessica Benjamin, there's lawfulness there. We know what to do when things break down. We can fix it. There's rupture, we repair it. Recognition carries on. My people stay my people. Now this is important because notice, at the first level, there was no other. There's just me in the rowboat. The second level, I throw myself out the rowboat too. And there's just emptiness. And it's easy to get stuck there, and it's easy to take that emptiness the wrong way. Think, well, we're stuck here then. There's nothing to do. Nothing really exists. Okay, or think, hey, this is it. Nothing really exists. This is fantastic. I'm here. Or, any other of the million games that we can play with ourselves. But at either of these levels, there's no sense of the other. There's no sense of relationship. There's no sense of evolution. And there's still no sense of not separate. At this third level, the level of relationship, there's me and there's you. And we are not separate. I'm me because you're you. I know I'm me because you recognize me as me. And you know you're you because I recognize you as you. Not separate. We are relationship. We are recognition. Now, if we want to get fancy about it, we could point out that this is a not separate, which allows difference, which demands difference, which allows us, which demands that we be our own people, and yet not separate. We're not merged, we're not some bland mystical soup, but we're not separate. We see each other, we recognize each other. So is our rowboat full or empty? Is the other rowboat full or empty? It depends which level we're talking about. At the level of The absolute, the universal, yep, both rowboats are empty. At the level of our individual psychology, yeah, it's really useful to see that the other rowboat is empty. I don't have to react. I don't have to have all this going on. But at the third level, the level of recognition, of relationship, I can see that non-separation is right here, right now. It's in us. It's in being here together in this space that we share. Me being me, you being you. How wonderful to meet you.